At 4:47 in the morning, while most of the city was still asleep, Nadia Jones was already standing inside Hangar 6 of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Alone, heels clicking against cold concrete, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning every rivet, every seal, every bolt on a $90 million aircraft like her life depended on it. Because to Nadia, it did. She wasn't just checking a plane. She was protecting a promise. A promise she made 22 years ago when she was nothing but a junior pilot from Lagos, Nigeria, flying cargo routes nobody else wanted. She was the CEO of SkyNation Airways, one of the fastest-growing private airlines in the United States. 12 aircraft, 600 employees, a Dubai expansion on the table, and an IPO that Wall Street analysts had already called the most exciting airline debut in a decade. Nadia Jones didn't get here by being soft. She got here by being the kind of woman who showed up before the sun. The kind of woman who trusted numbers more than people. The kind of woman who hadn't taken a vacation in 4 years. Hadn't called her mother in 3 weeks. Hadn't cried since the day she buried her father in a small church outside Abuja. She was a machine. Precise. Controlled. Untouchable. And everybody at SkyNation knew it. The ground crew feared her. The pilots respected her. The executives obeyed her. Nobody approached Nadia unless they were summoned. Nobody. Until that morning. Because at 5:12 a.m., while Nadia was crouched beneath the wing of Flight 214, running her finger along a hydraulic line most CEOs wouldn't even know existed, a small voice came from behind her.
Can I stand here for a minute?
Of course you can.
She turned slowly, and standing right there, in an oversized hoodie and sneakers with the laces untied, was a boy. Couldn't have been older than 9. Maybe 10. Brown skin. Big curious eyes. Hands stuffed in his pockets like he was trying to make himself smaller than he already was. Nadia stared at him. "Who are you?" she asked. Not warm. Not cold. Just sharp. The way she asked everything. The boy didn't flinch. "I'm Kofi," he said quietly. "My dad works here. He fixes the planes." Nadia glanced around the hangar. A few mechanics were setting up on the far side, prepping for the morning shift. None of them were looking this way. None of them had noticed their boss was being approached by a child who had absolutely no business being inside a restricted hangar at 5 in the morning. "You're not supposed to be in here, Kofi," Nadia said, standing up straight. "I know," he said. "But my dad couldn't find a sitter. So he brought me. He told me to sit in the break room and not move." Nadia raised an eyebrow. "And yet, here you are. Moving." Kofi looked down at his shoes. Then back up at her. "I wanted to see you." Now that caught her off guard. People didn't want to see Nadia Jones. People wanted to avoid Nadia Jones. People crossed hallways, ducked into bathrooms, pretended to be on phone calls just to avoid making eye contact with Nadia Jones. But this boy? This boy in his oversized hoodie? He walked straight to her. "Why?" Nadia asked. And Kofi said something that would change the entire trajectory of that day. "Because my dad says you're the only one who still checks the planes yourself." Nadia blinked. In less than an hour, that small sentence would stop a plane from taking off. But right now, Nadia didn't know that yet. She just stood there, looking at this child, feeling something shift inside her chest. Something she couldn't name. Something she didn't have time for. She looked at her clipboard. Then back at the boy. "You can stand here," she said. "But don't touch anything." Kofi nodded. He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a small object. A toy airplane. Built from popsicle sticks and tape and what looked like a piece of cardboard from a cereal box. One wing was longer than the other. The nose was crooked. The whole thing looked like it would fall apart if you breathed on it too hard. But Kofi held it like it was the most valuable thing he owned. Because it was. Nadia glanced at it but said nothing. She went back to her inspection. Checking panels. Marking notes. Moving with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Kofi watched her quietly. For a while, neither of them spoke. Just the hum of the hangar lights and the distant rumble of a plane taxiing outside. Then Kofi said it. Quietly. Almost like he wasn't sure if he should. Miss Nadia? Can I tell you something my dad said? He told me not to. But I think you should know. Nadia stopped writing. She looked at the boy. Something in his voice had changed. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was weight. The kind of weight a 9-year-old shouldn't be carrying. What did your dad say, Kofi? The boy squeezed his toy plane tighter. His knuckles pressed against the popsicle sticks. He said, "The man in the suit tells them to skip pages in the maintenance book." Silence. The hangar didn't get quieter. Nadia's world did. What did you just say? Kofi swallowed. The man in the suit. The one who comes down here sometimes. My dad says he tells the mechanics to skip pages. To not fill everything out. He says it takes too long and they need to move faster. Nadia's jaw tightened. Skip pages. In aviation, maintenance logs aren't paperwork. They're lifelines. Every check, every test, every system review is documented page by page because if something goes wrong at 38,000 feet, those pages are the only proof that someone verified the plane was safe to fly. Skipping pages doesn't just mean cutting corners. It means flying blind. Nadia crouched down to the boy's level. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were fire. Kofi, this is very important. The man in the suit, do you know his name? Kofi shook his head. No. But my dad gets scared when he talks about him. He says if he reports it, he'll lose his job. And we can't lose this job, Miss Nadia. We just moved here from Ghana. My mom's not here yet. It's just me and my dad. Nadia felt something crack inside her chest. Not the machine part. The human part. The part she had buried under spreadsheets and board meetings and press conferences and quarterly projections. She stood up slowly. Kofi, you did the right thing telling me this. The boy looked up at her with wide, uncertain eyes. Are you going to get my dad in trouble? Nadia shook her head. No. I'm going to protect your dad. She said it like a promise. And Nadia Jones didn't break promises. Not the ones that mattered. She pulled out her phone and made one call. Not to her assistant. Not to her VP. Not to legal. She called the maintenance records office directly. This is Nadia Jones. I need the full maintenance logs for every aircraft serviced in the last 90 days. I want them on my desk in 20 minutes. Physical copies. Not digital. Not summaries. The originals. She hung up before they could ask why. Then she looked at Kofi one more time. Stay in the break room. Don't tell anyone we talked. Can you do that for me? Kofi nodded. He held up his little toy plane. I'm going to fix this wing later, he said. It's not balanced right. But my dad says you can't rush it. You gotta do it piece by piece. Nadia stared at that crooked little plane. Piece by piece. She didn't know it yet, but that boy had just handed her the most important phrase she would hear all year. 23 minutes later, Nadia was sitting in her corner office overlooking the tarmac. The Atlanta skyline was turning gold behind the glass. On her desk were 11 binders. Thick, heavy. Each one representing the maintenance history of a different Sky Nation aircraft. She opened the first one. Page 1. Complete. Signatures in place. Timestamps verified. Page 2. Complete. Page 3. Complete. She kept going. Flipping carefully. Running her finger down each column like she used to run her finger along hydraulic lines in the hangar. Page 14. Missing. Not blank. Not damaged. Missing. The page had been removed. Cleanly. Precisely. Like someone had pulled it out with intention. Nadia's stomach dropped. She opened the next binder. Different aircraft. Different date. Page 14 again. Gone. Third binder. Same thing. Fourth. By the time she had gone through 7 binders, the pattern was undeniable. Specific checklist pages, the ones covering secondary hydraulic systems, auxiliary power backups, and emergency pressure seals, had been systematically removed from the records. These weren't random oversights. This was a system. A deliberate, calculated system designed to make planes appear fully inspected when they weren't. Nadia sat back in her chair. Her hands were steady. Her mind was on fire. Someone inside her company, someone with access to restricted maintenance documents, someone with authority over the ground crew, was falsifying safety records. And there was only one person at Sky Nation who had that level of access and regularly visited the hangars in a suit. Derek Okafor, Vice President of Operations. Her right-hand man. Her most trusted executive. The man she had personally recruited from Boeing 6 years ago. The man who sat beside her in every board meeting, every investor call, every press conference. The man she had once told a reporter was the backbone of this airline. Derek. Nadia shook her head. Not yet. She wasn't going to jump to conclusions. She wasn't built that way. She was built on evidence. On proof. On certainty. She needed to talk to someone who had seen it with their own eyes. She needed to talk to Kofi's father. Finding him wasn't hard. There were only 3 Ghanaian mechanics on the Sky Nation roster. And only one of them had a son named Kofi. Kelvin Mensah. Age 36. Hired 14 months ago. Spotless record. No complaints. No write-ups. Just a quiet, hard-working man who showed up early and left late and never caused a single problem. Nadia found him in Maintenance Bay 3, underneath an Airbus A320, grease on his forearms, focus in his eyes. The kind of focus that comes from a man who takes his work seriously. The kind of focus that comes from a man who knows that what he does with his hands keeps people alive. Mr. Mensah. Kelvin flinched. He slid out from under the aircraft and looked up. When he saw who was standing over him, his face went through 3 emotions in 2 seconds. Surprise. And then something deeper. Shame. Ma'am? He said, scrambling to his feet. Wiping his hands on his coveralls. Is everything okay? Did Kofi do something? I told him to stay in the... Kofi is fine, Nadia said. Her voice was steady. Almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. I need to talk to you. Privately. She led him to a small office off the maintenance bay, closed the door, sat across from him at a metal table that wobbled on one leg. Kelvin looked like a man sitting in front of a judge. Mr. Mensah, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need the truth. Not the version that keeps your job. The truth. Kelvin swallowed hard. His hands were trembling. Not from cold. Yes, ma'am. Are maintenance logs being altered at this company? Silence. Long, painful, suffocating silence. Kelvin looked at the table. Then at the door. Then at his hands. Hands that had fixed 100 planes. Hands that had built his son a toy airplane out of popsicle sticks because he couldn't afford the real thing from the store. Mr. Mensah. Yes, he whispered. The word came out like a confession at a funeral. Yes, ma'am. They are. Nadia leaned forward. Who? Kelvin closed his eyes. Mr. Derek, ma'am. He comes down to the bay. Sometimes late. Sometimes early. He tells us which pages to skip. Says the full checks take too long. Says we're falling behind schedule. Says if we don't speed up, the whole fleet gets delayed and people lose their jobs. And the pages that are missing from the logs? He takes them himself. Pulls them out before the binders go to records. He says it's already been reviewed digitally. That the physical pages are just duplicates. But they're not duplicates, ma'am. Kelvin's voice cracked. They're the originals. Those are the real inspections. And some of them were never done. Nadia felt the room tilt. Not physically. But something inside her shifted. Some foundation she had built her entire company on, trust, precision, systems, order, cracked right down the center. How long? She asked. 8 months. Maybe 9. How many aircraft? At least 7. Maybe more. I don't know everything. He doesn't tell us everything. He just tells us what to skip and when. Nadia sat back. 7 aircraft. Exposed to unchecked hydraulic systems, uninspected pressure seals, unverified emergency backups. Any one of those planes could have. She stopped herself. She couldn't think about that. Not yet. Why didn't you report this? She asked. Not with anger. With something worse. Sadness. Kelvin's eyes filled with tears. He didn't wipe them. Because he told us if anyone talks, we're done. Not just fired. Done. He said he'd make sure we never work in aviation again. And ma'am, His voice broke. I have a son. I have Kofi. His mother is still in Accra waiting for us to send for her. I can't lose this job. I can't go back with nothing. I came to this country with nothing and I built something and I can't. He stopped, pressed his fists against his eyes. Nadia watched this man fall apart in front of her. A good man. A man who loved his son enough to break rules he knew were sacred. A man caught between survival and conscience. And then Kelvin said the line that broke her. Quietly, almost to himself. I started praying before work, ma'am. Nadia didn't move. Every morning, before I touch a plane, I pray. Because I don't know anymore if the plane I'm working on is safe. I don't know if the one before it was safe. I don't know if the checks were done. And I think, what if something happens? What if a plane goes down and it's because of a page I didn't fill out? Because of a check I skipped because a man in a suit told me to? He looked at her with red eyes. I'm a mechanic, ma'am. I fix things. That's what I do. But I can't fix this. This is above me. Nadia stood up. Her face was stone. But her heart was a war zone. Mr. Mensah, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Kelvin looked up. You are not going to lose your job. Your son is not going to lose his father's income. And your wife is going to come to this country. Do you understand me? Kelvin blinked. Tears fell. I don't make promises I can't keep, Nadia said. But I keep every promise I make. And I am promising you right now, you did the right thing. Even if it took this long. You did the right thing today. She walked to the door. Stopped. One more question. Flight 214. The Dubai route. Scheduled for 11 a.m. today. Was it serviced under Derek's supervision? Kelvin nodded slowly. Were pages skipped? Another nod. Which systems? Auxiliary hydraulic backup. Pressurization seal verification. Emergency oxygen deployment check. 3 systems. 3 systems that, if they failed mid-flight, could turn a routine international trip into a catastrophe over open ocean. Nadia walked out of that office and pulled out her phone. It was 7:48 a.m. Flight 214 was scheduled to depart in 3 hours and 12 minutes. 206 passengers had already checked in online. Boarding passes printed. Luggage tagged. Families excited. Business travelers reviewing presentations. A honeymoon couple posting selfies with the caption, Dubai bound. And somewhere in the SkyNation executive suite, Derek Okafor was sitting in his leather chair, sipping coffee, reviewing the IPO prospectus, checking stock projections, and smiling. Smiling because everything was on schedule. Smiling because nobody had asked questions. Smiling because the one person he trusted to never look too closely, Nadia Jones, had been too busy running an empire to notice that the empire was rotting from the inside. But Derek made one mistake. He underestimated a 9-year-old boy in an oversized hoodie. A boy who built airplanes out of popsicle sticks. A boy who chose to stand next to the only person who still checked the planes herself. Nadia didn't go to Derek. Not yet. She went to her office, locked the door, and sat with the weight of what she now knew. The Dubai flight was the crown jewel. The showcase route. The one that every investor, every analyst, every journalist was watching. This was the flight that would prove SkyNation could compete with the big carriers on international routes. This was the flight that would make or break the IPO. If she grounded it, the stock projection would collapse. The investors would panic. The media would swarm. 6 years of work. 6 years of sleepless nights, personal sacrifices, missed birthdays, severed relationships, all of it would be questioned. If she let it fly. Nadia closed her eyes. She saw 206 faces she had never met. Families. Children. Couples. Strangers who had trusted SkyNation with the most basic, most sacred promise an airline can make. We will get you there safely. That's it. That's the whole promise. Not luxury. Not legroom. Not champagne in first class. Safety. And right now, she couldn't guarantee it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Morning briefing in 30. Dubai flight looking perfect. Investors confirmed for the live stream of departure. This is our moment, Nadia. Don't overthink it. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Don't overthink it. Nadia stared at that text for a long time. Then she opened her drawer and pulled out a single photograph. Creased. Faded at the edges. It showed a young woman in a pilot's uniform standing next to a small cargo plane on a dusty runway somewhere in West Africa. She was smiling. Not the controlled, corporate smile she wore now. A real smile. A smile that said, "I'm going to fly, and I'm going to do it right." That woman would never have let this flight take off. That woman checked every bolt, every seal, every gauge, not because it was her job but because she believed, deeply, spiritually, fundamentally, that the sky demands honesty. The sky doesn't negotiate. The sky doesn't care about your stock price. The sky doesn't care about your investors or your press coverage or your carefully managed public image. The sky only cares about truth, about whether the work was actually done, about whether the systems actually function, about whether the people on that plane can actually trust the machine carrying them 7 miles above the earth. The sky doesn't care about stamps. Nadia put the photograph back. She stood up, and she made the decision that would define her legacy. At 9:15 a.m., Nadia Jones walked into the SkyNation Operations Center. The room was buzzing. Screens showing flight data, gate assignments, passenger counts. Staff moving with the energy of a company about to make history. Derek was there. Standing at the center of it all. Confident. Perfectly tailored charcoal suit. The kind of man who made you feel like everything was under control just by being in the room. He saw Nadia and smiled. That wide, reassuring smile she had trusted for 6 years. "There she is," Derek said, opening his arms like a man welcoming a partner to a celebration. "The woman of the hour. Dubai flight is fully boarded in 90 minutes. Media's already setting up outside. I've got 3 camera crews confirmed for the departure. This is going to be..." Ground the plane. The room stopped. Not slowly. Not gradually. It stopped. Like someone had pulled the plug on the entire building. Derek's smile didn't fall. It froze. Which was worse. "I'm sorry," he said. "Flight 214. Grounded. Now." Derek let out a small laugh. The kind of laugh people use when they think they're hearing a joke they don't find funny. "Nadia, we can't ground the Dubai flight. We have 206 passengers boarded in. They're not boarded yet. And they won't be. Ground the flight, Derek." The room was silent. Every pair of eyes was on them. 20-something staff members holding their breath, watching 2 of the most powerful people in the company stand 3 feet apart with an ocean between them. Derek stepped closer, lowered his voice. But not enough. "Nadia, do you understand what you're doing? The investors. The IPO. The media coverage. We cancel this flight and everything falls apart. 6 years of work. Gone. Just like that." Nadia looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, she didn't see her right-hand man. She didn't see her trusted partner. She didn't see the backbone of her airline. She saw a man in a suit who told mechanics to skip pages. "I know about the logs, Derek." His face changed. Not dramatically. He was too polished for that. But something behind his eyes shifted. A flicker. A crack in the mask. The kind of micro-expression that only someone who had spent 22 years reading instrument panels and weather patterns would catch. Nadia caught it. "I know about the missing pages. I know about the skipped inspections. I know about the pressure you put on the ground crew." Each sentence landed like a hammer. Derek's jaw tightened. "Nadia, let's talk about this privately. You're making a scene in front of..." "I'm making a decision in front of my team. The same team you've been lying to. The same team you've been putting at risk." She turned to the operations staff. "Flight 214 is grounded effective immediately. Contact every booked passenger. Offer full refunds, rebooking, hotel accommodations, and a personal apology from my office. Contact the FAA and file a voluntary safety disclosure. Contact our legal team and begin an internal audit of every maintenance record from the last 12 months. She paused. "And contact security. Mr. Okafor's access credentials are to be revoked immediately." Derek's mask finally fell. "You can't do this," he said. And now his voice wasn't smooth. It was raw. Desperate. The voice of a man watching his carefully constructed lie collapse in real time. Nadia, you're destroying this company. Over what? Some missing paperwork? Some mechanic's kid telling stories. Nadia stepped toward him. Close enough that only he could hear her. That mechanic's kid told me the truth. Which is more than you've done in 8 months. She turned and walked out of the operations center. Behind her, the room erupted. Phones ringing. People shouting. The organized chaos of a company ripping off its own bandage. But Nadia didn't look back. If you've been watching this story unfold and you feel that tension in your chest right now, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a moment of the drama. By noon, the media had the story. Not the version Derek would have wanted. Not the triumphant Dubai departure, the champagne toasts, the investor celebrations. The real story. Sky Nation's CEO grounds flagship flight over internal safety concerns. It was on every aviation blog, every news ticker, every social media feed. The stock projections that analysts had called exciting were now being called uncertain. The investors who had been ready to write checks were now on phone calls with their lawyers. And Nadia Jones was sitting in her office, alone, watching it all burn. Not with regret. With clarity. Her phone rang 47 times that afternoon. She answered 3 of them. Her lawyer. The FAA liaison. And her mother in Abuja. Her mother didn't ask about the stock price. Didn't ask about the media. Her mother asked, "Did you do what was right?" "Yes, Mama." "Then come home when you're ready. I'll make jollof." Nadia almost smiled. Almost. The investigation took 11 days. When it was done, the findings were damning. Derek Okafor had systematically undermined maintenance protocols across 7 aircraft over a period of 9 months. He had removed physical checklist pages to eliminate evidence of skipped inspections. He had pressured ground crews with threats of termination. He had falsified digital summaries to make the records appear complete to auditors. His motive wasn't malice. It was ambition. The IPO timeline was aggressive. The fleet needed to fly more routes, more frequently, with faster turnarounds. Full maintenance cycles slowed everything down. So Derek made a calculation. A cold, mathematical, deeply human calculation. He decided the risk was acceptable. He decided that the odds of a failure were low enough to justify the speed. He decided that 206 lives were a reasonable bet against $1 billion valuation. He was wrong. Not because a plane crashed. Thank God no plane crashed. But because a 9-year-old boy in an oversized hoodie walked across a hangar at 5 in the morning and chose to stand next to a woman who still checked the planes herself. 3 weeks after the grounding, Nadia made one final visit to the hangar. It was early. 5 a.m. The same time. The same quiet. She walked through Maintenance Bay 3, past the aircraft, past the tool stations, past the lockers where mechanics kept their coveralls. And there, sitting on an upturned crate near the break room, was Kofi. Same oversized hoodie. Same untied sneakers. Same big, curious eyes. But something was different. In his hands, he held the toy airplane. The popsicle stick one. The one with the crooked nose and the uneven wings. Except now, it wasn't crooked anymore. He had rebuilt it. Carefully. Patiently. Piece by piece. The wings were even. The nose was straight. He had used stronger tape. Better glue. Taken his time. It still wasn't perfect. It was still made of popsicle sticks and cardboard. It still wouldn't actually fly. But it was honest. Every piece was where it was supposed to be. "You fixed it," Nadia said. Kofi looked up at her and nodded. "My dad helped me. He said you can't rush it. You gotta do every part right." Nadia turned and walked toward the tarmac. Behind her, Kelvin Mensah stepped out of the break room. He was wearing clean coveralls. New ones. With the Sky Nation patch stitched neatly on the chest. He watched Nadia walk into the morning light. Then he looked at his son. "Come on, Kofi. Time for breakfast." "Dad." "Yeah. She's going to be okay, right?" Kelvin looked at the woman disappearing into the sunrise. The woman who had burned her own empire to the ground rather than let it fly on a lie. The woman who had listened to a child when every adult around her had stayed silent. Yeah, he said quietly. She's going to be just fine. The Dubai expansion was delayed by 14 months. The IPO was restructured. 3 board members resigned. Derek Okafor was terminated and referred to federal authorities for investigation. SkyNation Airways lost 40% of its projected market value in a single quarter. And Nadia Jones? Nadia Jones stood at a press conference 2 months later and said 6 words that would be quoted in business schools for years to come. The sky doesn't care about stamps. She paused. Let the cameras flash. Let the silence breathe. Then she continued. It doesn't care about your schedule, your stock price, your press coverage, your carefully managed image. The sky only cares about one thing. Whether the work was done, whether the systems are real, whether the people who trust you with their lives can actually trust you. She looked directly into the camera. I forgot that for a while. A 9-year-old boy reminded me. Somewhere in Atlanta, in a small apartment with a kitchen that smelled like his dad's groundnut soup, Kofi Mensah sat at the table doing his homework. His toy plane sat on the windowsill, both wings even, nose pointing straight ahead, piece by piece. The sky doesn't care about stamps, but it always remembers who told the truth.